Will come to order.
There.
Good evening and welcome to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting this Monday, January 22nd, 2024, the first BPAC, or Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting of the new year. As a reminder, for those who are in attendance this evening, perhaps for the first time, the City of Raleigh Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission is an all-volunteer commission. We have arrived here given our City Council appointments by our colleagues who have been elected. And as volunteers, we work, again, in this advisory capacity with not only our colleagues on City Council, but our colleagues on City staff, our professional, full-time colleagues on City staff, along with, of course, members of our public, our growing public here in the city of Raleigh, one of the fastest growing cities in the country right now. And as it is, we have found ourselves here because we believe in investing in and improving our public infrastructure, our connectivity, our active transportation infrastructure, our bike lanes, sidewalks, all the ways in which we navigate our city. With that, we will continue with introductions. I'll kick us off. My name is Nick Neptune, Chair of the Commission. We'll proceed to my left.
Joe Caruso, Vice Chair and Chair of the Policy Committee.
Brian Thomas, Chair of the Outreach and Engagement Committee.
Alex Rottenberry, I'm on the Policy Committee.
Elizabeth Alley, Policy Committee.
Tammy Stern, Planning Committee.
Mary Jo Gellenbeck, Planning Committee.
Celeste Bravo-Taylor, Planning Committee.
Thank you, my fellow commissioners. I'd like to also recognize that we have our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission City Council Liaison, District D Council Member Jane Harrison in attendance tonight with us. I think y'all can see her there. And then I think that Ms. Clark, have you already introduced yourself?
Beverly Clark, Chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, and liaison to the BPAC.
Thank you for being here with us, Ms. Clark. Colleagues on staff, would you like to introduce?
Barbara Godwin, Transportation Staff.
Bradley Kimbrell, Transportation.
I'd also like to acknowledge that we have some colleagues from City Transportation in the audience as well, but won't call them out. Just want to acknowledge that they are here, deeply appreciate them. Big fan, big fan. Okay, with that, we will have, let's say, an approval of our minutes from our previous meeting. I'd like to ask the commission, has anyone had a chance to review our minutes? And if so, do I hear a motion to approve? It appears we're taking a moment to review the minutes. We will enjoy that moment while I seek a motion to approve. I've yet to hear a motion, but I see smiling faces. I see smiling faces, so that would seem to indicate the...
You're about to hear a motion.
Oh,
So
we are
let's,
about to hear a motion.
Let's wrap it up over there. We good?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
No, good.
We're all smiling.
Yeah.
We're all smiling.
Motion to approve.
Oh, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Thomas. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
I hear a second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no objection, the motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting has been approved. Thank you very much. We will now proceed with public comment. If we have any members of our public here to make comment, as a reminder, if you would like to make comment, please keep your comments limited to 2 to 3 minutes. 2 to 3 minutes. Anybody from? I know I see a familiar face. I see a familiar face. Would love to. Yeah, absolutely, please. Now's the time. Now's the time to shine, as they say. Time to shine.
Okay. I'm Margot Aerosmith, and I have two things that I would like to have put into the record. The first is, and I want to thank everybody who invited me to the subcommittee meeting where the new plans for Kaplan were presented. I'm not sure if they were approved exactly, but I do know that it's going to be expensive to do, which frankly I also know means that it's probably never going to happen. So I want to tell people that just taking down the no parking signs will in fact cost nobody anything. Matter of fact, you can take those signs and put them somewhere else. It'll save money. But the other thing is, and I noticed a while back, because I know the big push, and I understand this, is for connectivity. Am I using the right word? The bicycle lanes on Kaplan starts right in just to the east of that park, Kentwood Park, and Kentwood does not have any bicycle lanes, and that's where they start. It stops probably about 100 feet before Gorman Street, which basically means that that particular area connects to nothing and never will connect to anything. So I guess what I'm saying is that there is no connectivity there. There never will be any connectivity there. The only purpose it serves is to inconvenience the residents of two townhouse establishments. So again, I do want to remind people that just taking those signs down would not cost anybody anything. But I do want to ask, is there any plans to do this, or at least to...
Well, real quick, the question is, are there plans to move forward with
the plan that they came up with, yes.
Updates to Kaplan Drive? I will obviously defer to city staff to offer a real-time update, but I would also, just before we proceed with that response, I wanted to just acknowledge and express my appreciation, Ms. Aerosmith, for you being here tonight, taking your time, your energy to join us and to share the concerns of your neighboring community. That's number one. Again, thank you. Number two, I do want to make sure that it's been noted, this idea of just maybe simply taking the no parking signs down could potentially be a solution. I mean, we'll check in with staff to see if that's maybe a real option. I don't, and staff doesn't necessarily have to make a decision right on the spot here, but would like to make sure that it is noted in the public record. And then last but not least, there is this question about connectivity and what appears to be at the moment a lack of real connectivity. And, I think that there's a truth in that the current setup that we are bearing witness to today in 2024 is a reflection of a bike plan, a bicycle transportation plan that was originally passed and adopted in 2015. There were some, I think, updates or priorities sort of kind of modified in 2019, but effectively it was a 10-year plan that was adopted after, I think, 18 months of public engagement. That would take us from 2015 to 2025. And so in some ways, I think we're still trying to carry out the projects that we were seeking to deliver through that plan. At the same time, what's quite timely about your engagement with the Commission and engagement with colleagues on staff is that as we near the end of that 10-year bicycle transportation plan, we're actually gearing up for a new plan. And so we will be able to modify, potentially, including potentially including the Kaplan Drive sort of situation, but that will come after further public engagement and listening sessions, both with residents, with business owners, operators, et cetera. So all that to say, I think if there is what appears to be, I think from a, let's say, public perception, a lack of connectivity today, it could be in part a reflection of the fact that we're actually still in the midst of trying to execute the projects that were offered up in a 10-year plan. But with that, I'd like to defer to staff if they have any further comment.
Thank you, Mr. Neptune. You covered a lot of what I was going to touch on as well. Just speaking to the bike plan update, we are actively working with our partners at the state to begin that process. And with that process includes another round of public engagement that will furthermore recommend prioritization of projects in our long-term bike network. So that's currently where this could fit into the bike plan update, is being a part of that engagement and further recommendations from the priority list.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin. And I think there's also a specific question about Kaplan Drive and the, let's say, the suggested path forward in addressing some of the neighborhood concerns. My understanding is that there isn't currently funding associated with any solutions that may have come out of this subcommittee in conversation with the neighborhood. Is that also a correct sort of observation?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And that's why I made a suggestion that wouldn't cost anybody any money. But one of the reasons there's no connectivity is because there's one lane here and then there's a bicycle lane. And all of a sudden, the reason the bicycle lane disappears is because it becomes 2 lanes for cars. So is the plan going to be that they're going to take away that lane for the cars? Because I doubt it.
Well, it's a great question, and I think we're going to make a note of it and acknowledge that certainly I don't have the 2015 bicycle transportation plan here in front of me, and I could not speak to that level of detail. But again, I think where I find some gratitude is in knowing that because of your engagement on behalf of a neighborhood and a community, that will definitely be taken into consideration as we move forward with this update to our next, I think, 3 to 5 year bicycle transportation plan. So ultimately, it's a very timely, opportunity to engage both the commission and city staff on the Kaplan Drive community. So, Ms. Aerosmith, many thanks to you. Oh.
I do have a
Yeah,
question.
Ms. Gellenbeck?
Ms. Aerosmith, can you explain that particular bike lane? Is it on a section of the road that has a grade or an uphill climb? Or is it flat?
Well,
or is
in
it
front
going
of my
downhill?
house, it's not. I mean, the whole thing
Where
is...
the bike lane is?
Yeah, where the bike lane is. I don't think so, the one that's in front of my house or the one that's in front of Falcon Ridge at all.
You think it's flat?
It could be down by Hunter's something or other.
Sure.
But I don't think by us, but it does stop in order to accommodate cars.
Correct.
Moving cars, not
Sure.
parked cars, just moving cars.
Well, and if I could just briefly, I know many of us, including Councilmember Jane Harrison, I want to say Michael Moore, who was, I think, the Director of Transportation at the time, Ms. Godwin, and a few others, we were there on site and, examining this bicycle infrastructure, and there is this incline, I think, this
Well,
there's like a steady
that's further west.
slope.
I think that's further west, more by
By the park.
Hunter's Ridge.
And then down by the park, right?
Yeah,
And
by
it's a
where the park is. I'm talking
considerable
about
grade.
where it goes into
It's a considerable grade.
into Gorman, and then it suddenly stops because they got to have 2 lanes for cars.
The reason why I ask is sometimes it's really effective to have the bicycle lane when the grade is really steep, so that both modes of transportation have a safe passageway? Because the bicycle rider will be
I
slower. So
understand.
that's why I asked.
Yeah,
And
but this
I'm
is-
just trying to understand this space
There's no,
better.
not here. This is pretty flat.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. Do we have any, oh, Councilmember Jane Harrison, we'd love to have you, please. Again, Councilmember Jane Harrison, District D.
Hey, y'all. Just a couple things. First, I want to say it was very cold this morning on my bicycle, but I made it to work. Thank you all for what you do. I just wanted to mention that we are going to have a District D Neighborhood Association meeting on Saturday, February 17th. It will be at the Carolina Pines Community Center, and because of a suggestion from Brian Thomas here on BPAC, it is going to focus on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, specifically in District D around Carolina Pines. But anyone who wants to come out, Ms. Aerosmith, if you want to come and talk about our area around Kaplan, this will be an opportunity to hear from transportation staff about the bike plans, we've had, what the updates are going to be, and to just talk about hot spots and opportunities for improvement, I think both for bicycle and pedestrian access. So please, if anyone would like to come with BPAC, or if you know anyone in that area, please invite them. Again, Carolina Pines Community Center, Saturday, February 17th at 9:30.
Well, if I may, just briefly, first of all, Councilmember Harrison, thank you for joining us tonight to share this event, this community engagement opportunity on Saturday, the 17th of February, I think at 9:30 at
9:30.
Carolina Pines, is that
Yep.
right? Well, I just also want to acknowledge that I personally have had an opportunity to attend a couple of these sessions with the council member, and they're always a good time. Always a good time, always informational, educational, and engaging. As it happens, I will be out of town this particular Saturday, but I'm hopeful that perhaps Commissioners Thomas and others will be able to join you at the session. Is there any question, comment from the commission?
I will just say that my wife and I will certainly be there, and my wife also survived this morning in 18 degrees riding her bike to work. So kudos to you and to my wife. So.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comment from any members of our public? Well, hearing none, we will proceed. We have a full agenda tonight. We are going to move forward with a Greenway Master Plan update from our colleagues in Parks. We're very much looking forward to that. And I think we have Chris Nickfar to kick us off.
Good evening. I'm Chris Nickvar with Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources. I was the project manager who managed the update to the Greenway Master Plan. So tonight I am going to, there we go. I'm going to give you an update on the plan itself. I know that some of the members here were not members of BPAC during that update process, so I'll start by giving some background on the project and then go into some of the ongoing work that is supporting recommendations from the plan. So the original Greenway Master Plan was adopted by Council in 1976, and it did have a couple of updates after that. But prior to the most recent update was done in 1989. Obviously, the city of Raleigh has changed quite a bit between 1989 and present day, and also to accommodate the differences in interests for people that use the system, the update to the plan was way overdue. We had an extensive community outreach process for the Greenway Master Plan. The plan was led by a 22-member steering committee, 2 of which of those members are members of BPAC as well. This project, I'll note, kicked off at the very end of 2019 with the intention that the first round of public outreach would be in the spring of 2020. And I think all of us know what happened in the spring of 2020. COVID happened. So we had all of these plans to do these in-person events, concerts, and festivals across the city. We had to obviously change all of those things to go to virtual and online. And I think that really worked in our favor. I have been in public sector planning for 20 years. I've managed, I can't even tell you how many public projects. It's really easy to get people to participate when you make them angry. It is much more difficult when you're doing something that they like. But with COVID, people couldn't go anywhere, couldn't shop, they couldn't go anywhere else. They had to be outside. So we saw significant increase in utilization of the system during that time period. And because of that, we had over 4,000 people complete our online surveys. We received over 3,000 comments. We had 3 virtual open houses, so it was also an opportunity for us to try out some new and emerging public outreach processes that we hadn't tried in the past, and those were highly successful. Not only did we have a lot of people participate in those, but we got a lot of really constructive feedback that we were able to quantify and collect that data. So the plan, we had high expectations for it. We had to accomplish a lot considering all the changes. So some of the, I'll go over just briefly some of the major changes here on the left side of the screen here. The plan defined new trail classifications for the system. We developed a project prioritization process which we had not previously had. The plan identified new trail projects as well as projects to improve existing trails on the system. It identified new open space corridors, and then there are over 200 recommendations in the plan, and they all fall within one of the categories that are listed here on the right side of the screen. So trail classifications are essentially a cross-section that can be applied to a trail depending on what it connects to, who the intended users are, and what the surrounding environment is. For our system, we have 3 classifications that were developed. We have Oak City trails, which you'll see an example of what that might look like on the far left there. These are our urban trails. They're the ones that connect activity centers. They're likely to be used by transportation users in addition to people who are using it for recreation. The center one is an example of a neighborhood trail. People go for their walks after work in the evening. And then the one on the far right is the scenic trail or loop, and these ones are typically in less developed areas, sometimes rural. They really connect our users with nature, so they're more likely to be used by people who are using the system for recreation versus transportation. And the cross sections differ depending on mostly the amenities and built environment differences that the users on these different types of trails might use. So like if you have an Oak City trail, you're more likely to be connecting to high capacity transit. So you may need to have better connections to where the bus stops are, or where a future bus rapid transit stop might be. This here is the matrix showing the prioritization criteria that we use to rank the new trail projects. So on the left of the screen, you'll see the 9 criteria that were used, and on the far right, you'll see the points that were associated with each of those criteria. You'll notice that this was a very equity-based prioritization criteria that we came up with. And we identified 98 trail projects across the system. We prioritized them into 5 different tiers, numbering them from 1 to 98, and they are ordered in the number that they were prioritized through the matrix. 64 trail reinvestment projects were identified on 13 different trails. Those improvements could be repaving, they could be tunnel lighting, trail widening, wayfinding, amenities, and more. So open space corridors, historically, if you ask somebody to define a greenway, they might say, well, it's one of the trails that we have here in the city, but actually the greenway was the environmentally sensitive stream corridor that was intended for protection in those sensitive areas, some of which were appropriate for trail development, some of them were not. So the greenway was not the trail, greenway was the corridor. We clarified that in this update, identifying that the open space corridors are the protected corridor, and that's better just for understanding for the general public, that they can continue to call the greenway the trail and the open space corridors where the trail is located. So as far as recommendations go for planning and development, some of the recommendations were to clarify definitions in the UDO, to incentivize trail-oriented development, and to give developers opportunities to contribute to trail construction. For trail security, some of the recommendations were to engage the community about trail operations, compile emergency response and crime data to specific locations so that we can focus improvements where there might be some challenges, and consider ways to design trails and amenities to increase real and perceived safety. As far as maintenance and operations, enhancing communications about trail closures and detours, supporting staff to make sure that staff increases in resources along with the increase in size of the system, and then also to strengthen the rapid response maintenance when there are storms have come through, there's storm debris, and cleanup is necessary. Environmental stewardship recommendations were to enhance stream cleanup efforts, promote a culture of shared stewardship among Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources, other departments, volunteers, partner agencies, and the community, and to continue to protect environmentally sensitive areas. And for collaboration and partnerships, we are to continue to work across departments to establish an interdepartmental working group to address any topics or issues that come up related to the Greenway system, and then also to take a more active role in community conversations around homeless people. Now I'm transitioning into the supporting of the plan, so I'm going to be talking about some projects that we are working on or have recently completed that are a direct result of recommendations that came out of the Greenway Master Plan. And what you see here are 4 Greenway projects that were included in the 2022 Parks Bond. So all of these projects are funded. The Big Branch Connector and March Creek Trail feasibility project, those are 2 new trails. The Walnut Creek Trail improvements and Lakeland West Loop project, those are reinvestments in existing trails. Additionally, investments in safety, we've had the pavement markings applied. You might have noticed the centerline markings that have been applied across the system. By the end of this year, every tunnel that's on the system will be lit at night or during the day, just to have lighting. We've been providing more proactive detours and information regarding closures. Our marketing staff has worked on and led some etiquette and safety campaigns. And then there's the 6-officer dedicated RPD task force that they're assigned to do nothing but monitor the Greenway system. As far as amenities, we've been able to accomplish a lot. 10 bike repair stations have been installed, 35 benches, 11 trash cans, 4 mirrors. For those of you who are familiar with the system, you might remember those old wood trailhead ID signs that have probably been around since the beginning of the system. We're in the process of replacing all of those with new signs that not only are more attractive, but they also have the street address on them, which is helpful if there's an emergency, somebody knows where they are. And then lastly, we've just kicked off an update to the Greenway Pocket Map and also a wayfinding plan that will develop new types of signs we don't currently have that will better be able to provide more information, especially for transportation-oriented users. And then lastly, we're going to be working on updates to the comprehensive plan and the UDO. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
Mr. Nickfar, thank you for this great presentation and update on our Greenway Master Plan. I do have an initial question before we get to the commission. In terms of the bike pumps, these like the repair stations along the Greenway. If we come across one and we recognize that it's in need of maintenance, let's say, with one bike pump, the entire pump valve has been stripped for whatever reason, who would be an appropriate contact to come through and maybe repair the repair station?
You can contact our Greenway maintenance staff directly. Their phone number is actually on every one of our pocket maps. If you don't have access to that, you can call the front desk of our department. They'll probably direct you to me, and then I can direct you to maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comment from the commission? Ms. Gellenbeck?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I want to make a comment about the new pavement markings that have been placed down. And the reason why is that it really transforms the trail from being a part of a park system to a transportation system. And I've noticed that while using the trail, bicyclists are able to cycle much faster instead of maintaining that 10 miles per hour because of the pavement marking, which is used in transportation. And I wanted to get feedback on that. What the purpose of was, why did you add the pavement markings, and do you recognize them as a mode of transportation rather than part of a park?
Okay, that's an excellent question. No, we do not recognize them as something that's specific to transportation. We recognize them as something that is very helpful in locations where you have multiple different user types. If all we had on our system were cyclists, we probably would have fewer crashes. Cyclists, they operate on the system very differently than pedestrians do. What we have experienced, or what we hear a lot, especially related to crashes, is that a lot of times the pedestrians will spread out across the whole trail. A lot of times people will be walking their dog and they might let the leash go and the dog may be on one side of the trail while they're on the other side of the trail. The center line really just keeps people on the side of the trail that they're supposed to be on. Without that line, they really don't know. They think that the entire trail belongs to them. And it's not just the pedestrians. You obviously have the cyclists that don't call out, or they're going too fast. Speed is always something that we struggle with. But the overwhelming response to the center line stripes has been positive. People have really appreciated it informing other people to stay on the right side. It's something that is best practice in terms of trail programming and function across the country, not just here. And we have countless examples of that. It's probably not appropriate for every single location, but we applied it. And this first application of it, we didn't use a thermoplastic that would stay down for a lot longer. This is just a general pavement marking paint that we applied. It should last 1 to 3 years, and it'll give us a better idea of where it works successfully and where we may not want to apply it again in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate the feedback. In transportation, it's a very contentious environment, sharing the space. Because of the regulations and the rules that are for participating in that public land area. And my impression is that the Greenway Trail System is a place to connect with nature. And when you put the pavement markings down, it can set up the dynamic of confrontation between people who are using the trail. Stay on your side of the road, instead of it being a kind of a communal gathering place. So I wanted to just offer that feedback. That's my personal take. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. Any further comment from the commission? Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I have a question. I had the privilege to attend the Greenway Committee meeting earlier this month with Ms. Bravo Taylor. She and I serve as liaisons to that committee. And at that meeting, you discussed the wayfinding project related to, I think, kind of gaps in the Greenway and where sidewalks might help fill in those connections. Can you talk about that a little bit more, or is that part of the wayfinding efforts that you've mentioned tonight?
It's actually a separate project, but it's ongoing right now, so I'm sure I'm happy to talk about that too.
Okay, that'd be great.
What he's talking about is the sidewalk sections of the system. You may be on the 10-foot wide asphalt path, and you come to a point where there is no asphalt path anymore. You have to get on the sidewalk, and it might be for a significant amount of distance. And even though we have signs, sometimes they're easy to miss. Sometimes there's just not possible for us to place a sign there. So it can be confusing for users in some locations to go along that entire sidewalk section and make it to the next point where the trail picks up again. So we have started a sidewalk pavement marking project, which will develop some type of marking that can be applied on the sidewalk itself that will guide users along that segment to get them from where one section of trail ends and the other section picks up.
I think that's great. And I think you mentioned previously that project is funded as well?
That's correct, yes.
Good news, always good to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Caruso?
Yeah, I had a kind of technical question around the open space corridors that you mentioned. Can you kind of explain a little bit what that kind of technically means? So as a little bit of context, I mean, we've been kind of struggling and dealing with how we deal with connecting to the Greenway itself from non-Greenway places. And a lot of that ends up being issues with like easements and just connectivity. And I think the Clean Transportation Ordinance kind of does a little bit to further that, but the is the corridor intended to be like just is it like the entire easement? Is it the city property? What is the corridor, and like how is that different than what we're doing now or historically have done?
It's not really different than what we have done historically. The only thing that has changed is the definition. So when the Greenway system was initially created, it wasn't created as a system to be for trails. It was created as a way to protect environmentally sensitive stream corridors. So what we're calling the open space corridors now were called Greenway corridors then. So Greenway is not what back then was not the trail, it was the actual corridor. And it was to prevent development from encroaching into that, to cause harm to sensitive environmental areas and species. So that's what the open space corridor is.
Okay.
Some of them are appropriate for trail development and some of them are not.
Okay, so it's the entire corridor. It's not specific to the path itself. It's kind of
Correct.
the buffer area.
Right.
And then kind of related to that, on your last slide, you mentioned comp plan and UDO updates. Is that effectively just implementing the master plan, or is there something beyond what's in the master plan, or what updates are you looking at for the comp plan?
So we haven't gotten into that specifically yet, but I mean, there are certain, in the past, developments that included residential were required to dedicate easement for Greenway system, but if there was no residential, they're not required to do that. There are other adjacent communities where it doesn't matter what the development consists of. They are required to donate that. So when you have places like maybe downtown Raleigh or North Hills or someplace like that where they might be building a large office tower that would generate a lot of trips, people could use that potentially for recreation during their lunch hour or even just to get to and from their job. Currently, we don't have a way to have that developer provide the space for us to put a trail there. So that's something that we'll be looking at to update in the UDO that would give us the ability to do that. And that's just an example.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Mr. Rottenberry.
Thank you for coming out this evening. I've got a hyper-specific question and then a more general one that's based off of that one. I saw recently that Campo had put out an RFQ for the Triangle Bikeway, and I'm curious to know, I guess, how involved you and your department are with that, if at all. And then that leads to the more general question of when we're talking kind of like about regional. I gave the Vision Zero guy some questions about regionalism too, so you're no different. I'm going to ask you kind of how you work with our surrounding communities to kind of make a more comprehensive system.
If you wanted.
Well, and as Lisa approaches, I want Lisa to approach, but I want to acknowledge that the commission is represented on the Triangle Bikeway project as a member of the advisory committee that meets virtually every, like once a quarter, effectively. I just wanted to acknowledge that with our commissioner. Lisa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Schiffbauer. I am a senior Greenway engineering supervisor for Parks and Recreation, and I can answer that question for you. So I'm very involved in the Triangle Bikeway project. We serve on the steering committee for that project. We also overlap with our transportation folks in transportation in that coordination. So we've been involved in essentially every ongoing meeting, part of the process along the way. So very engaged in that effort. And then the second part of your question, if you can repeat that.
Just the broad, collaboration happening between the city and other communities that surround it.
Yeah, there's several groups and organizations that the city coordinates with pretty regularly. We have the Triangle Trails Initiative that is just at the top of my head. We have ongoing conversations with other communities, Wake County pretty regularly. And then whenever a adjacent community that touches the city of Raleigh has projects that our systems are connecting to, it's just a general partnership that those communities reach out to the city. And typically, if we have projects that run through Wake County or that need to be coordinated with adjacent communities, we typically do that. The Neuse River Trail is a great example of that coordination. because we had to work with the county, we had to work with Wake Forest, Clayton, Nightdale. And so that effort was a result and successful because of all the coordination efforts that were committed to that process.
Just one other question, and then I'll be quiet. I'm completely unrelated. You mentioned that you were working on a wayfinding plan. You also mentioned, I think you referred to it as like a pocket map or something like that. I might just recommend an unsolicited recommendation. I worked on a regional wayfinding plan in Kansas City when I was there, and we incorporated our maps into the wayfinding system, so they would be, essentially the maps were a part of the wayfinding system at the end. So I would just recommend that just for cohesiveness, for branding purposes or whatnot. So
Yeah, and both of those projects are being managed by the same contractor, and they're actually in tandem, parallel, happening at the same time. So that is something that we'll be doing.
perfect. Thank you.
I also just wanted to briefly acknowledge a fun fact about the Triangle Bikeway project. If I'm not mistaken, a former commissioner from the Raleigh Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, if not former chair, if I'm not mistaken, Sig Hutchinson, has been deeply engaged in this work in advancing the Triangle Bikeway. He went on to become the Wake County Commission chair, where he continued to advance this project, and I think to this day is still deeply engaged in advancing the Triangle Bikeway, which now has like a program director, and increasingly every day we're getting closer.
Realer and realer.
That's right. 20 years later, it's about to happen any day now. Shovels in the ground. Thank you, Mr. Rottenberry, for the questions. Any further question or comment from the commission? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to thank our colleagues from Parks for joining us this evening to share this great update on the Greenway Master Plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have our 2024 resurfacing projects presentation update. If I'm not mistaken, our one and only Ms. Godwin will be presenting. Welcome, Ms. Godwin.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. Barbara Godwin with Transportation. A couple of quick updates for you on our resurfacing projects that are going to be taking place in 2024. So I'm going to jump to the next slide here. I know we've had a few commissioners that have joined since the last round of resurfacing, so I wanted to provide a bit of background information on this program and the frequency. So the city has an annual resurfacing program, which essentially is an opportunity for us to go and address streets that have poor pavement condition. We do this on an annual basis, and during that time, once the final list of streets is made available, we take a look at our bike plan and overlay that with the list of streets that are going to be resurfaced, and really take it as an opportunity to increase our project delivery through this resurfacing program. Additionally, it's an opportunity to update crosswalks and curbs and sidewalk ramps to current standards. So just a quick snapshot for you of what's to come in terms of bike infrastructure. We are going to be taking a look at both St. Mary Street and Donald Ross Drive for a couple of different road diet projects. So both of these streets that are proposed for buffered bikeways currently do not have any bike infrastructure. So we're currently doing an evaluation of both of those corridors in terms of the space and what we're going to be able to fit on those corridors to make connections. And so additionally, we have a few neighborhood bikeways that are being proposed, those being Latimer Road, Marthana Way, and then Shannon Street. So those will essentially consist of a Shero-type facility connecting lower volume streets into existing infrastructure that connects into higher volume streets. So typically we recommend sending this item to the Planning Committee to do a further review of some conceptual design that we have available. We're still at a very early phase in the design process, so at this time we do not have any detailed pavement marking plans, but can essentially present a concept really to the committee and use this as an opportunity to get feedback from the commission. So the planning committee meets tomorrow night at 5:15. And Ms. Gellenbeck, I believe you're sitting chair while Mr. Tong is out. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Godwin. Any questions, comment from the commission?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Alley.
I have one about St. Mary's. My quick scrolling on my phone tells me that's right next to Broughton High School. Is that correct?
Correct.
Will they be involved in the, I don't know what the feedback process is for these. I mean, it's adopted in our plan, and it's a routine resurfacing, so I don't know what our outreach is. I'm for it. I mean, I think that's a particularly hostile place to be in anything other than a car, maybe even in a car. But just curious
Ironically.
what that looks like when we're next to a major institution.
It's a great question. Specific to St. Mary Street, so with this resurfacing project, we've had, outside of our bike infrastructure, some evaluations done on those existing striped crossings with our traffic engineering and Vision Zero teams. And they have been pretty heavily engaged with Broughton High School.
Great.
There's been an analysis done on the existing pedestrian counts that are using those crossings. And something I should have mentioned is that we are actually going to be getting 2 raised crosswalks where some current unsignalized marked crossings are.
Wow,
That's great.
That's great. Before we move on, the Nichols Drive, is that a block away from Wade Avenue?
That's correct.
So the section of St. Mary's traveling towards Broughton from Wade Avenue to Nichols Drive is exceptionally hostile for bike riders. And there's a lot of bicycle riders coming from the neighborhood using that particular St. Mary's and Wade Avenue to gain access to the village district or school, or even to make it all the way to downtown, because Glenwood is even more challenging. So that isn't on the scope of work or the resurfacing, huh?
So that section is a part of the resurfacing, and we did consider extending the road diet up through that intersection. But after running some analysis at that intersection to see what the lane reduction would look like, it was determined not to be feasible. That section is actually a recommendation of our priority bike plan. So what we would look at doing is taking a closer look at how to improve getting a separated facility in that section between Nichols and Wade, and essentially would be looking at doing something at a later time that would bring cyclists behind the curb.
Okay. I use the sidewalk when I'm cycling because of the aggressive nature of the drivers in that particular area. So, thank you.
Ms. Bravo Taylor.
Yeah, I had a quick question. I think I have an understanding of the infrastructure and/or plans to expect with a buffered bikeway, but could you explain a little bit about what neighborhood bikeways would provide that's different or similar, or what that infrastructure looks like, please?
Yep, so the neighborhood bikeways don't necessarily speak to a dedicated facility, but essentially would include a Sharrow-type concept that guides cyclists from one facility to another. Essentially, we would also be looking at doing some wayfinding that would help guide that directional perspective for the cyclist in addition to the Sharrows. Those are typically focused on our neighborhood streets that have lower volumes of traffic, connecting into greenways or other pedestrian, cyclist-friendly areas.
Okay.
Can I piggyback off of that one too? Because I wanted to ask about the bikeways with the Sharrows.
Ms. Gellenbeck and then Mr. Thomas.
You go ahead first. and
Okay,
then
thanks,
I'll-
Brian. When the road speed limit is 35 miles per hour, it is not shareable between the two modes of travel. And is it possible for bikeways, neighborhood bikeways, to have an automatic traffic speed reduction to complement the city's goals of making that connectivity from one district to the next one?
So that's a great point, and something that we have been trying to be more proactive about in partnership with the neighborhood traffic calming program. As it relates to our project specifically, I think it's something that we could take a look at doing with Will's program and traffic calming and be more proactive about it from our side of things as well. So yes, we can certainly take a look at that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian.
Sure, and I just wanted to bring up for the planning committee, really, just thinking about traffic queuing that occurs along St. Mary's during drop-off and pickup times at Broughton. And I'm all for bike lanes there and doing whatever we can to slow down traffic, but I also don't want to invite people to bike in areas that are going to be inherently dangerous at certain times of the day. So just let's keep that in mind as you think about this project more.
Yeah, I know it firsthand.
Yeah, same here.
It's frightening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Tom.
Ironically, this road connects to one of our Wake Public County schools. And so
And a park.
and a park, and it does get you even closer to one of our Wake library system facilities. And so for us to not have the design that would induce bicycle riding just seems counterintuitive to me. So, I just want to say that, yeah,
Buffer's gonna do some heavy
it's going to be a challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Caruso?
Yeah, thank you. I would, I guess, just like to make a comment about the section on St. Mary's between Wade and Nichols Drive, or Nichols Drive, yeah, is that I hear the staff comments about basically being unable to do a road diet at this point. I would just provide a comment that that the area, that right-of-way is very constrained, and I have a hard time seeing any type of reasonable or any type of additional right-of-way being acquired without either redevelopment of the area or massive expense to the city. And so I think that we should really take a harder look at dropping one of the northbound lanes at that intersection. There's 3 lanes in the northbound direction, and dropping that to 2 and providing space not only for bikes but moving some of the traffic back away from the sidewalks themselves, I think would be very appreciated. The buffers, even currently, the buffer space between the back of curb and the sidewalk is very minimal. So even if no one really rides their bike there because of the other kind of factors, I think it would make it a far safer and more pleasant place to walk, even if you're just staying on the sidewalk.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Ms. Alley?
One final question about the buffered bikeways. Just to confirm what a buffered bikeway is, does it include the bollards as part of this project?
So as part of the resurfacing contract, that does not include the vertical delineation, but it's something that we would go back and do as a separate initiative.
Gotcha. And I would imagine, I think to our point about right next to Broughton, if for it to be safe, it will need vertical delineation like by the time that thermoplastic is down. So hopefully, I'm sure y'all agree. So hopefully that can, I can't imagine there would be a delay there between implementing one without the other, or much of one.
I don't have a timing, an official timing outline yet, but it's something that we could do fairly quickly, yes.
That's great. I just, it's one of those things like we don't want to invite people to break the rule of parking or queuing in that lane and develop a bad habit, right? It's a hard one to break, like parking in bike lanes along Kaplan, right? That vertical delineator is going to be critical. Thank you so much.
Ms. Bravo-Taylor?
Yeah, just to back Commissioner Crusoe's point, I was wondering if the Planning Committee is going to have a chance to look at this St. Mary's Street project, if it was possible to also have a bit of a review about what was looked at with the intersection, and if that could be discussed as well.
Yes, so we will have that analysis available, and our transportation engineer that ran the analysis is planning to be there, so she can speak to that much better than me.
Ms. Rottenberry, and then Ms. Clark.
Thank you. One quick question. I saw that along that stretch that the 8 bus runs down St. Mary's, and I'm kind of curious to know how that interacts with things. How the bus, when it needs to make a stop or something like that, does it just drive on the lanes or whatever? Or?
Yeah, so we would look at that with our partners in transit and figure out what the best solution is, because we haven't gotten that far into the design. It's not anything that I can speak to specifically at this point, because everything's still very conceptual, but essentially we would work with transit to best align the design at the bus stop.
Terrific. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Ms. Clark.
I live there, near there, and walk that area quite a bit. And I think one thing that you have to take into consideration when you look at that stretch between Wade and Nichols is not just the north-south traffic, but the frequency.
Ms. Clark, will you use the microphone, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
The frequency of right turn lanes from the eastbound Wade Avenue traffic, the stream of, there's no stopping. They just turn on a red there. And so you would want to be mindful of that bicycle traffic coming south when that right turn is happening. So I just throw that out for the planners.
No, it's absolutely true. Just remembering some of those instances is making my heart rate increase, which is really problematic. You know, that's what we're talking about here is the experience of the active travel user. It doesn't improve our health. It causes stress in that particular area. So I really appreciate the city putting this on their list of projects to tackle, because that is connected to so many different types of housing, and also just the public services that I've already listed. But we haven't even mentioned the grocery store that's within walking distance of that space, and the pharmacy, and the gymnasium, or gym, not a gymnasium, but and then retail and restaurants. It's just spectacular if we can create a conducive environment that enables everybody to feel like their choice is a good choice. So thank you, Ms. Godwin.
Ms. Alley?
I'm assuming this is going into planning committee. Is that what I'm understanding?
I believe that's correct.
Join us.
If I can, I'd love to. But a question I would have as part of the discussion is this notion of a behind-the-curb facility being most appropriate. And Mr. Caruso brought up that it seems like that would only be possible through redevelopment. There is some right-of-way behind the curb in some of the places where I think you could patch. But a policy question I have is, if this project were to come for redevelopment, what would our UDO get us behind the curb in terms of facilities for both bicyclists and pedestrians? And do we like the answer to that question? You know, is it supportive of our long-range goals?
Yeah, it should be an avenue, so I would think it would get the normal TC3,
21.
yeah, TC 321, the separated facility.
Right. I just know it also, like, the urban form might be getting us a wider sidewalk even outside of that.
Yeah,
with the
that's true.
density and, I don't know. It's a question that I think could be addressed at planning committee.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think my concern is that personally I don't see wholesale redevelopment happening in any near term. Yeah, it's individually owned condos at that intersection. So I think kind of wholesale redevelopment in the next 5 to 10 years is unlikely. And if we were to do a city-initiated project, one, it would probably be quite expensive, and two, we would likely lose effectively all of the street trees to stay even halfway close to the existing right-of-way. And, you know, that would not be ideal for a number of reasons. So yeah, I like I said earlier, I think we should really look at what we can do as far as a road diet coming up to the intersection.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Ms. Bravo Taylor?
Just to emphasize that point again, I think we've we continue to have this issue at intersections where we get, I mean, we just were talking about Kaplan Drive where it gets dropped off right before a very dangerous intersection, which creates a not very easy to use, not connected path. And so, yeah, it's sort of hard to hear that we'll get to it later, when the hope would be that maybe the city has some options for, not ideal, but at least carving out that space so we continue to just gain more space and more connectivity, even if it's not the behind the curb or the most ideal facilities that we were hoping for, just to set up that precedent that it is possible and that it is workable and that people can learn to respect those options as well. Or that there might be some other option that the city could come up with that, again, isn't pushing it off till potentially a decade later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, a decade is very optimistic. But yeah, I would like to make a request. I know it's a quick turnaround, so if it can't happen, then it's fine. But for the planning committee, I would like to see if staff could bring crash data from that intersection, both bike ped and vehicular. I have a feeling it's quite bad. So I think that would be an important kind of data point to look at if we're kind of making this decision based on turning volume and traffic volume in general. I think we should also be at least mindful of what the crash data looks like, and because I know that that's kind of part of the Vision Zero program, is that they're looking at what treatments we can do at intersections that are high crash zones. And like I said, for vehicular as well, like, it's not Vision Zero, it shouldn't just be bike ped, it should be, people that are getting T-boned in a car as well. So if staff could bring that tomorrow, that would be appreciated.
Well,
I've got Ms. Gellenbeck and then Ms. Clark.
thank you. Right, I mean, crash data is important, but we also know the perception is also important. And it's perceived dangerous because of the experience using that space. So I hope that we move more towards a deeper understanding of the user's experience rather than being driven by data. I think we've got to elevate the way that we are creating the infrastructure for transportation more in a social science or behavioral science than actual data, because it's inhibiting people. I am an active transportation user, and I am inhibited more and more to travel on our roads here in Raleigh because of the driver behavior. Yeah, right? That's the opposite direction that we really should be seeing. We should be adding, not reducing. And I know that we've had an increase because the stats have said so, but I suspect that, those new people are going to stop coming, just in the same vein that I'm reduced my active travel because of it. So thank you for letting me jump in there, but I just really hope that we elevate above just reacting, being reactionary, and be more proactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gellenbeck. Ms. Clark.
Two points, especially going to Ms. Alley's point of does the UDO now, if we did have redevelopment, there will be redevelopment sooner than 10 years on the property across the street, the former Rex Hospital property. And so you do have to take that into consideration, even though the condominiums there are less likely to be redeveloped in that time frame. The other thing, and this is totally unrelated, but because I fell on the thermoplastic wide crossing that intersection, when we talk about when Mr. Nick Farr mentioned it on greenways, I'm very opposed to adding a whole lot of thermoplastic on greenways because of the slip factor. And in these big intersections where we have really wide white lines, we create a fall hazard for both pedestrians and and cyclists. And so since it happened to me at that particular intersection, it brought it to mind. It doesn't relate specifically to this conversation, but I do hope it is something that as we look at surfacing, that it ties into all of these things together.
We appreciate that note, and we're grateful that you're okay, Ms. Clark, in all seriousness. Holy moly. Any further comment or question from the commission? I see Commissioner Stern.
I just have a question. The other end, the Peace Street end, does it end there because that's where the surfacing plan ends? Okay.
Correct.
It should keep going to Hillsborough. That's
The next bike plan, we'll have to relay that communication. Any further comment or question from the commission? Hearing none, Ms. Godwin, thank you for all of your work, and I think we look forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon at Planning Committee.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, my friends, we will continue right along here at nearly 10 minutes past 7 with our reports. I'll kick us off with an abbreviated chair's report just to say that since we last met, I want to say in November, we had a holiday recess in December. I've certainly been deeply engaged in numerous meetings with colleagues across city staff and with our nonprofit partners out in the community. I've got some upcoming, and I should also mention there have been some appointments. I want to recognize Commissioners Caruso and Thomas for jumping in and serving as, liaisons to our parks team, to folks working on the BRT. There have been opportunities and occasions where our colleagues on the commission have stepped in to be representative of the commission's concerns with regard to, again, future park plans and the development of the BRT. Would like to note that I do have some upcoming meetings that I'll be attending along with city staff. This coming Thursday, we have the Transit and Transportation Committee, I think it's a City Council Committee, presentation will be offered, I believe, on Brookside Drive. Our friends with Brookside Drive, I think, will see and hear a real-time update on the progress that has been made in exploring that issue. Ms. Godwin, is that correct?
So we will be giving a more general overview on both our bicycle plan and pedestrian plan, talking a little bit about the history of both of those plans and the implementation progress, as well as highlighting our upcoming bicycle plan update through the IMD grant from NCDOT. So we'll have a very robust discussion, and hope you all can tune in or join.
Love that. And I think the key word that I heard there was implementation. Implementation. One more time, implementation. Okay, yeah, love that. Love to stay on track. Mr. Thomas?
Where and when on that meeting I would like to attend if possible.
Yes, so that'll be this Thursday at 3 o'clock here in council chambers.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Our item is second on the agenda. There's one before that.
Thank you. I've also got a meeting this Thursday with our own Jason Harden of the Office of Sustainability. We'll continue the conversation that he brought forward to us about this pending text change, TC 323, to improve, I think, effectively neighborhood connectivity wherever we sort of find ourselves with these like cul-de-sacs and et cetera. Looking forward to having time with Mr. Harden. Other than that, I know that recently we were approached by colleagues with the Environmental Advisory Board with regard to the upcoming City of Raleigh Environmental Awards, the awards. And the Environmental Advisory Board and their awards committee would appreciate if we had one or two colleagues here on the commission that might consider joining them in serving on a jury to recognize folks out in our community who are actively seeking to advance good works that are also good for our climate and environment. So I'll put it out there. If we happen to have anybody interested on the commission, I've got notes here that the actual jury, let's say late afternoon. Oh, it's a bit of a happy hour, is what it is. 4 to 6 o'clock. 4 to 6 o'clock. I don't know if happy hour beverages will be involved, but I will say it's a jury night on March 14th from 4 to 6. And then the award ceremony will be on Earth Day at Dorothea Dix Park on the 19th of April. But anyways, is there anybody on the commission who might be? I see smiling faces. I see, and no rush. You can always get back to me. I saw another reaction from Commissioner Thomas. No comment. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, I will follow up with the commission via email. I suspect we will have a commissioner who will join the jury for the Environmental Advisory Awards. But with that comment, I will wrap up the chair's report. How about Planning Committee? I know Commissioner Tong is not with us, but I suspect, I don't see any pending items, or perhaps there's no report from Planning. Policy Committee, Commissioner Caruso is acknowledging that there's no pending items there. Now, Outreach Committee has certainly been, engaged with our public.
Yeah.
Commissioner Thomas, would you like to share an update from Outreach?
Yes. We met Thursday, January 11th. We had a bit of a light turnout. However, a productive discussion ensued nonetheless. We continue to refine our thoughts around advising the public on engagement strategies with this commission, with city staff, and with council as it relates to bike ped issues. And I think our goals here are to sort of help the public understand the roles of this commission, the limitations of this commission. We do serve as volunteers in an advisory capacity, as we've discussed, and also try to streamline, if we could, the work of city staff to the extent that we can, acknowledging that our staff is engaged in projects that are often the result of existing plans that reflect, their combined expertise, the professionalism of our consulting community, a great deal of input from the public through numerous engagement opportunities. So more to come on that subject. We also continue to work on crafting a values and vision statement to help guide the development of our upcoming bike plan, or we might even start calling it an active transportation plan. Maybe, we'll see. We have a draft statement that I'd like to other members of this committee to take a closer look at. Hopefully we can refine that more and perhaps have something ready by March for the full commission to adopt. Mr. Neptune, did you want to add something?
Well, if I may, on that note, I believe that Ms. Gellenbeck may have recently engaged in some outreach of her own with an author and a noted transportation advocate. I wonder, Ms. Gellenbeck, would you mind sharing with the Commission updates from your recent engagement?
Sure. Thank you, Brian, for bringing the subject up. I am excited about what was brought to the commissioners at the outreach. The city is engaging us to think about the language that would elevate the values that are guiding lights for building and designing and building the bike network. And I thought that was very exciting for me because it does tap into, takes you out of that technical element of it, the engineering part, and brings in the user experience, which is really great. So a couple of weeks back, I went to D.C. for an annual event called Transportation Camp D.C., and the guest speaker there was Veronica O. Davis. Ms. Davis is the Director of Transportation and Drainage Operations for the city of Houston, and so she has this really big role. But her career in transportation started in advocacy work, and so she recently published a book that was given to all of the attendees at this event, and it's called Inclusive Transportation. I brought home a copy for Raleigh's DOT staff so they could do a quick deep dive into the experiences that she has had as an advocate, as an active transportation user, as a woman, as a person of color. The book doesn't really go into the weeds, but it goes into her experiences and all of the experiences which enable her to become a really effective decision maker in the role that she is here today. So, I'm really excited by what I'm hearing from the staff, and it gives me a lot of hope. I used to think on a regular basis, I got to leave Raleigh because I can't take it much longer. But when I hear things like that being developed behind the scenes, I feel more and more grounded and confident that we're going to tackle the challenges that we have today. And Raleigh's going to be still that place that I call home, that offers big city benefits and delivered with small town charm, because we're creating the infrastructure that enables us to stay connected as a community. So thank you, and I look forward to sharing this with you guys.
Well, if I may just briefly, Ms. Gellenbeck, thank you for your continued advocacy and, frankly, your commitment deeply grateful that we've not lost you yet. You know, we've got work to do, and we need as many to be engaged and involved in that work. And I'm also grateful that prior to your bringing inclusive Transportation by Veronica O. Davis to our attention, this book was also on my radar, and I have been in contact with our colleagues and friends at Oaks and Spokes, our colleagues and friends on city staff with transportation, and others to explore this idea of maybe hosting a bit of a book club, right, where we could all perhaps enjoy reading the book together, and perhaps during Bike Month we can find ourselves some time and space and maybe some wine and cheese at So-and-So Books to have ourselves a little evening time conversation about inclusive transportation. Yeah. So just putting it out there, commissioners, do not be surprised if you find copies of that book in a space, in a home, in a mailbox coming your way here sometime soon. With that, any further comment from Commissioner
I
Thomas?
just want to touch on the idea of experiences that you bring up. I mean, those can be negative and positive experiences, right? You know those fearful situations, but you also know that sense of, this is how I want to move through this place. I feel good. This makes me feel enlivened, you know, it contributes to my sense of well-being. So I think we should keep those in mind as well. Just a couple other things to mention. We did defer our discussion of the Clean Transportation Ordinance to our February meeting. And then other additional engagement activities that I've been involved in, most of them have already been mentioned. I will say that I met with the NC State Bicycle Working Group on January 19th. They are eliminating some parallel parking at NC State along Morrill Drive and installing some bike lanes there, so that's exciting because I use that to commute by bike. And I think that about wraps it up. So
It's been a busy season
It has,
for our
indeed.
colleagues and friends on outreach. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Up next, we have reports from staff.
So I'm going to invite Hannah Dos Santos up to the podium. She's going to be sharing some updates from the micromobility program.
Ooh, exciting.
Hannah Dos Santos, good evening, commissioners. I'm with the transportation team, and I'm going to be providing just a quick update on the micromobility program 2023. So, and giving you a heads up and some updates on what we're looking into 2024. So it's a really exciting year for the micromobility program as we work to enhance what our program offers residents. From the scooter side of things, our program, we're currently trialing 2 software programs to support the daily management of our scooter program. This software will help us make more data-informed decisions as we continue to expand the program. In 2023, this was our highest year of scooter trips, and we had more than 300,000 trips completed by scooter. In collaboration with Spin and Lime, we are currently doing a deep dive into the data trends since the program started in 2021. And we were doing this to ensure that we have the measures in place to keep the program successful moving forward. From the bike share side of our program, some highlights include in 2023, we averaged at 548 new monthly members, and bike trips averaged around 42 minutes, just a fun fact. Over the past couple of months, we have seen a healthy amount of interest from developers and others interested in purchasing bike share stations, so that's really exciting for our team to see that kind of growth. And as new developments unfold in the program, I will keep you updated as appropriate, and I'm thankful for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Dos Santos. Any question, comment from the commission? Mr. Caruso.
Yeah, I had a question about the scooter program, and you mentioned that there was 300,000 trips last year. Is that the entirety of 23?
That would be 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that I think that's quite remarkable. That's way more than I was expecting there to be. Do we have? I know on the bike share we have kind of a data set of where those trips are happening. Do we have a similar data set from the scooter program?
Yes, first off, I wanted to just acknowledge Barbara Godwin, who kicked off the scooter program. And so the success we're seeing, I think, is attributed to the wonderful work that she started. And I'm very excited to be building on that. And on the second question, we do have a heat map that shows us where most scooter trips are happening. And part of the software trialing is making that information more publicly available for people who want to do research, for people who are interested in understanding where those trips are happening. So one of the benefits of the software would be you would be able to see directly on a map where most scooter trips are happening. That information is available. As we move forward with the data trends analysis, that's definitely something that's going to be informing the bike ped plan and update, so that we can make sure that we're aligning these two efforts.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, I would definitely be interested and hope that the city uses that data to inform, especially the kind of upcoming downtown mobility plan, but also the bike ped plan updates. I think that's, there's certainly going to be, I don't want to say bias, but we have to be mindful that a number of routes may not be currently being taken because they're considered unsafe or undesirable. But I think it would, at a minimum, I think it will be very useful to see where people are going today, and ideally we can kind of build on that and make those corridors even more attractive.
No, thank you, Commissioner Caruso. That's insightful, and I think it's something we can definitely incorporate more heavily in our planning efforts this year.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Ms. Gallenbeck?
Yes, thank you. So you may not know, I came across an article that recently announced that the scooter companies were closing, filing bankruptcy. It didn't mention, Lime or Spin in particular, but the scooter really does enable for micromobility. And is the city aware of that? Are you aware of the vulnerability of Lime or Spin to be able to provide those services?
We are aware, and we're in the phase of beginning the planning stage for the next iteration of the program. And so something that Barbara and I have been talking heavily about is how we build resiliency into the program.
Yeah.
It's a new program, and so cities don't necessarily have best practices or strategies in place. So it requires innovation and creativity that we're working with senior staff, we're working with Barbara to figure out solutions that might be first of its kind. But we definitely are seeing the trends, and we're also seeing the data on our end of how it's being used. So we're looking for innovative ways to just keep the program alive, even if it requires a different solution than what exists today.
And if I could just briefly follow
Nice.
that acknowledgement, and it's a great question, something that I suspect this commission has been a witness to over the last handful of years, 5, 6 years, as the e-bike stations and the scooters have come into existence. At least I'll say directly, I have also observed as people have had more exposure to those like rental programs. I've also been a witness to people just buying their own, like just buying. I mean, even I, which I didn't see it coming, but even I have an e-bike now, and I love it. Okay, and so I'm really struck by, this sort of this like transition that we're like living through together as a society, which ideally will be met by our city leadership, on staff and on council as we make decisions to improve our public infrastructure so that it continues to be safe and comfortable for us to get around using alternative modes of transportation, right? We should not have to rely on a car to get from home to where we want to work or learn or just play and participate in the city. And so even as we navigate, these like companies and their sort of life cycles, my sense is as we continue to double down on these investments in public infrastructure, that's a good thing because we're still seeing a steady increase in the numbers of folks who are actually making use of their own scooters or their own e-bikes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I love the question. And I deeply appreciate the work of our colleagues on city staff. And I can also acknowledge that I've been in conversation with colleagues on city staff about the very same. So any further question or comment from the commission here at 7:27 o'clock? Hearing and seeing none, Hannah Dos Santos, thank you so much for everything. We deeply appreciate you and our colleagues and city staff. I do also want to make a quick comment, just as a quick reminder for our colleagues on commission. City staff, I think with Ms. Godwin at the lead, they prepared for us a brief, like one-pager, two-pager note on some updates that we've requested, including on the Chavis Strollway and the Downtown Transportation Mobility Operations Study, Oberlin Road Streetscape Projects updates, Faircloth Street Cycle Track updates, and the Bike Raleigh 2024 plan updates. So those notes are included in your packets, and they're also available, I believe, online for public review. But with that, let us transition, if there's nothing more for city staff, to our general board comments. Any general board comments at 7:28? Commissioner Thomas.
I appreciate the BPAC memo that's included here. I really appreciate the time you take to do that. I have a question about the Faircloth Street Cycle Track. It noted in that memo that there's no funding for that project. And what I'm curious about is I thought that this project was imminent to be constructed back in the 2020, 2021 timeframe, something like that. So my question is, was there ever any funding, or was funding used for something else? What happened there?
So the project in its current place is really approaching a 30% design point, which is the point where we would typically get the cost estimate for the project. And so now that we are at that point and inching further into the design, we know what the project's going to cost. We can take the effort necessary to request that funding. But at the time that you were referencing in 2021, it would not have been funded because we would not have known what the cost was at that point in the design.
Okay. Next question is Hillsborough Street bike lanes. Any update there?
So due to the weather that we've had recently, it's still been too cold for the thermoplastic. And so we're hopefully getting some warm days, I think, in the next 7 to 10 days. So
Okay.
Hopefully there'll be an opportunity. But yes, at this time, due to the temperature of the ground, we've not had a chance to successfully install that thermo.
Okay, and my last item, and we've talked about this before, the Lineberry Street bike lane maintenance. I use C-Click Fix to report blocked lanes, down trees, piles of leaves. I did that on January 13th. My service ID is 2089549. I rode there today. Nothing's happened. I know we talked about lack of resources to deal with these kinds of problems, and I just want to point out that if this were happening on Wade Avenue, it would be fixed in, hours or less. But, in a bike lane, it persists. And another citizen, an anonymous user of C-Click Fix, reported this as well back in, I think, December. Again, the problem persists. And, if we want to cultivate a community of cyclists using bikes for transportation, we've got to, work with the people who are trying to do it now. I know resource allocation is a strategic decision. Well, this is something that needs an immediate fix. So what is a tactical fix? How can we deploy resources that are available now to fix this immediate problem? And I'm not saying it's up to you, Barbara, to do all this. I'm just putting it out. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any further general board comment?
Yeah,
Ms. Gallenbeck.
I'd like to piggyback off of Commissioner Thomas' comments about the conditions of the current bike lanes. And I am going to question the city's service to collect homeowners' leaf debris, which has been a program, I'm not sure how long that has been in existence, but the homeowners are dumping their leaves on the road itself. And that's not where they should be leaving them, no pun intended. And so consequently, the bike lanes have these big dumps of debris that sit there for months. So in addition to just the natural debris that gets blown into the bike lanes, we have this 6-month period where these homeowners are dumping their leaves in the travel lanes. And it seems inappropriate that a city that's growing in population would continue to allow this to happen, that our public land dedicated to transportation is becoming so valuable for our economic engine and our well-being of our community that we should be using the equipment that they use to pick up these leaves for all of the bike lanes that we have, so that the lanes that people are traveling in, they don't have to divert into the motor vehicle travel lane. They can stay in that bike lane. For parents who see the bike lane and it's clean, it increases their confidence that when their child heads out on a bike, that they're going to be in that space and not going into the travel lane. And so I'd like to question why the Raleigh's DOT is enabling for its area to be dumped in. And why can't we take a stand? We can approach the city manager and say, we don't feel that this is an effective way of using our resources, that we are diminishing this very valuable public land for space that just shouldn't be done anymore. So thank you, Brian, for bringing that up. One of the things that I wanted to also mention is that bike lanes that are protected with no parking, and when I see homeowners dumping their leaves in that bike lane that's protected from no parking, I feel so much emotions wrapped inside it. And I don't know what to do as an advocate anymore.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck. Ms. Bravo Taylor.
Just to piggyback on the leaf collection discussion, it does feel like an issue that impacts all active forms of transportation, in addition to vehicular transportation. And I think it is a question of I think I do have a question about the program in general, as it doesn't seem to function for the city as a whole year-round in keeping our streets clean, and I don't know what the answer is. I just wonder if we shouldn't be allowed to move our leaves into the road if it's not going to be cleaned up for months. That it should be.
I mean, I hate to say it.
I just question. I think to your point, because we have struggled so much to keep things clean, it does make me wonder, is there the ability to review this program if the city is unable to actually perform the program in a functional way?
Absolutely. There's so much frustration that's being expressed by the residents themselves. They feel like the city is offering them a service and then they're not following through with it. But as I was listening, I was thinking, what if those homeowners were dumping them into our stormwater system?
Well,
They
essentially are.
The curb is,
yeah.
I mean, my road, I'm waiting on mine. Sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely.
I mean, so my neighborhood, which has no sidewalks and no bike lanes, and a lot of bicyclists and drivers. So in addition to being in the one lane that's left that is both a merged travel lane and now a bike lane and a stroller lane and a wheelchair lane and a pedestrian lane, those lanes also now flood because the curb inlets, which that is what a curb is for stormwater drainage, are blocked with everybody's leaves. And every year, somebody puts it on the listserv, please don't put your leaves at the curb. And every year, people do it.
Every year. And since
They
the
still
day...
haven't been picked up, right? So it's almost
And it's
February.
been multiple years that I've brought this up, and it just evaporates, like breathing my hot air coming out in a cold wind. We have to take a stand, especially as the population is growing. It's not a functioning program. It's not serving our community at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gallenbeck, Ms. Alley, Ms. Bravo Taylor. Mr. Caruso, did you have a comment?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, just to comment on the part about putting the leaves in the street. For better, for worse, that's kind of already the policy. As you know, to their ability, the city does communicate that you're not supposed to do that. But people. So the procedure is that you're supposed to put it on the planting strip between the curb and the sidewalk, but no one does that because it kills their grass. But just for the record, the policy is already that you're not supposed to dump it in the street, but enforcement is not there. But But I totally agree. I think we've heard the issues with this program for many years at this point. My read on it is that the issue is just that there's not enough funding for it. There's not enough trucks and people to run the trucks. So as with a lot of things, if we would like an improvement, it needs more money is kind of my summary of what it seems like it always has kind of boils down to.
Well, Mr. Caruso, I appreciate the point of information, I think, for the commission. You know, I wonder if this may be an opportunity for our colleagues on our planning committee, potentially Ms. Gellenbeck. You know, and I do believe that. I think the entirety of the commission is certainly feeling this let's say, reasonable agitation over what appears to be a program that isn't, you know, currently working effectively. And so now, what I also appreciate, though, is that, you know, Ms. Alley brought it to light that this is also a question of, you know, stormwater, right? I mean, it is truly impacting our stormwater. And so we do, in fact, have, as a city, an entire stormwater, you know, commission or board that's engaged in that kind of oversight and that advisement. And so I wonder if Ms. Alley, or not Ms. Alley, but Ms. Gellenbeck, if you would be comfortable in connecting with our colleagues on the stormwater board and our commission and to sort of explore this issue with them to see if there could be perhaps almost a sort of a joint check-in between the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission and our colleagues on stormwater to see, you know, what exactly is happening right now with our leaf collection system. Because let's follow through on all this. At the end of the day, we have a city made up of neighborhoods. And within the context of those neighborhoods, we have houses, we have schools, we have parks, we have people who live there. And in that context, we have people who live and who work here, people who work on city staff, who I think, just to be clear and to be fair, I think we have colleagues on city staff who do show up every day and every night working very hard to maintain and to build and to strengthen one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And of course, along with that, there will be tension and friction from time to time, you know, because we're human beings. So all that to say, I think it would be welcome, perhaps a check-in with our colleagues, you know, in conjunction with our colleagues on stormwater, Ms. Gellenbeck. Like, what exactly is happening right now with leaf collection in the city of Raleigh? Because there are a variety of ways in which the, let's say, quality of our lives has been increasingly impacted, and I think it's just worth a review. It's worth checking in. And so, Ms. Gellenbeck, would you be comfortable leading that?
I'm comfortable with that. My problem is that I'm so fired up. I don't know if I'm the appropriate person. I might go in there.
Well, I appreciate that self-acknowledgement. I do feel your passion. I wonder if I could defer to Ms. Alley. Would Ms. Alley be comfortable?
The bastion of calmness down at the end of the table.
Well, I tell you what.
I'd be happy to dick a little bit on it.
Is that okay,
But I
Ms.
wouldn't
Alley?
say I'm calm about it either, but I'm happy to.
Well, I appreciate the work of this entire commission, but Ms. Alley, if you wouldn't mind spearheading that sort of check-in with our colleagues on stormwater, because it could have come up there. It may have come up previously. They might be able to offer a real-time update. And if not, perhaps we can, again, explore this issue area together. So thank you. I really appreciate
It's a great
that's what
suggestion.
general board comments are for. You know, we're having a conversation. So thank you to our colleagues on commission. I do also want to acknowledge we have a couple, I mentioned this earlier, but we have Kenneth Ritchie in the audience. We've got Paul Callum, our Director of City Transportation, here with us and, you know, spending time away from their loved ones, their families this evening. It is 7:41, almost 7:42. Is there any further general board comment? I see and hear from Commissioner Gellenbeck at 7:42 that there is another comment to
I know
make.
what time it is. Let me just get to it then. I am interested in the Northwest Street from P Street to Wade Avenue pilot project. I noticed a call for comments or feedback that was posted. I believe that period has ended, Ms. Godwin, for January 5th.
Yes, that's correct. So
Okay.
that closed on the 5th. Next steps are to really evaluate that feedback, and we got many, many points of feedback on that survey. So we'll be bringing that forward at a later meeting likely towards the spring for an update.
Okay.
Great question.
When I looked at the current drawings that went up for the survey, they did not resemble the ones that the commission had worked on when prior to it being paused, like when Fontaine was here. And I'm curious to know if those drawings or those comments that we shared and crafted were in the survey. I don't know if my memory isn't serving me well, but it seems like I didn't see what we had suggested and proposed as the commission on that particular pilot project.
Do you recall the specifics of the differences?
One of them, yeah, sure. One was that where West and Peace meet, there is a very high grade or a hill that's hard to climb on with a bicycle, and there's a sidewalk there. And so one of the comments I made last year was to not share the bike lane with pedestrian and bicyclists for that section because of the challenge of cycling up that space. Since we already had a pedestrian sidewalk, that lane should be a dedicated bike lane. But in the drawings that I saw that recently came out, I think I remember seeing it both pedestrian and bicyclists in that shared travel lane. And so that's one example that I remember specifically addressing back last year, which I thought was pretty a valid, contribution to the overarching design.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think with the survey, really what we were trying to understand is the nuances, or not necessarily the nuances at the transitions, but the cross-section itself of, what do you want to see for the duration of the corridor? So one of those being the multi-use path, one being more pedestrian focused on one side, and then one being more pedestrian focused on both sides. So it was more high level. The design details that you're referencing could be incorporated still into the design.
Okay.
It was just more of a high level type survey of the way that the space was being used
Okay.
throughout the entire street. So point well taken.
Okay, great. I also want to bring up the use of, they nicknamed them the beg button, which is the button to activate the pedestrian crosswalk sign. And I know that our Vision Zero program manager, Sean Driscoll, has also noted that he has been aware that the public is not using the beg button. And as our population grows and we move more towards an urban environment, in the urban setting, there is no beg button. You don't have to ask for it. It's automated. And so it's inside the cycle of the lights. And so I just want to bring that up, 5 points in particular. There is the beg button. I have mentioned this before. I see people sitting and miss the cycle because they didn't activate the crosswalk signage, because they're not aware of it. They're just anticipating that it's going to change when the motor vehicle lights change. So I really want to bring that to the table again, that the city should be thinking about moving forward. Can we transition out of this, let's add the beg button so that it gives the pedestrian longer time to cross the road? Well, you're actually causing conflict because they're not crossing at all, and then you cause confusion. So I think we should drop the beg button in moving forward. So thank you. Last but not least, I want to make a comment about being a bicycle rider on Blunt Street with Go Raleigh bus drivers. There was a post on social media about how the bus driver was driving too close to the active transportation user, causing them to get off the road and hop onto the sidewalk, which generated another comment of the similar experience, which reflects my own similar experience. The Go Raleigh drivers, bus drivers, are not showing training that would be sensitive to other, the more vulnerable road users out there. And it's troubling. So when we're looking at designing and we have a bus lane, I don't think that we should share the bus lane with active transportation users. When we have a bus lane, there should be a buffer between them and the bicycle rider. Until the Go Raleigh's team recognizes that training a driver to be aware of the conditions that they're generating for the active transportation user, I think we really could really keep that in the forefront of our mind moving forward. It's a hostile environment, and I wanted to make a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kellenbeck. Any further comment from the commission? Mr. Rotenberry?
2 quick comments, and it was actually just some ideas that I had for potential, if you lack agenda items in the future. One is that I recognize that the MUTCD has recently been updated, and I think that would be really an interesting update to get on, in particular for bike ped facilities and the changes that have been made. So that was one thing I was going to request. And the other one is that since I've been drumming the regional beat tonight, the drum tonight, I'll make a pitch as well to. I'd be interested in getting, perhaps an annual or biannual update from Campo on some of the projects that they're working on throughout the year too. I think a lot of the projects they work on would touch heavily upon what the commission does in their work here, and adjacent items as well. So I think if you would, I don't know if I have any particular projects off the top of my mind now, but I think it would be interesting to get updates from them on a regular basis. So I just wanted to make that request. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment from the commission? Hearing none, we'll transition to, oh wait, just a moment. I want to stop for Ms. Clark. Ms. Clark, did you have anything to share from Parks?
No, other than one quick thing, we did an update on Saturday of our work plan, and I highly recommend a mid-year update on your work plan. It was extremely productive, so just as an organizational issue. And I'm so appreciative of Ms. Bravo Taylor and Mr. Thomas attending and actively participating in the Greenway Committee. It really does make a difference.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. We too are grateful for the service of Commissioners Thomas and Bravo Taylor, in addition to the rest of this very talented and energetic and committed commission. With that, we will transition to upcoming events. I do have just a few. One, this Friday, the 26th of January, Oaks and Spokes will be hosting their annual members party and board elections. If I'm not mistaken, one Beverly Clark may be in the running for the Oaks and Spokes board. As we know, she has prior electoral experience, and so we wish her the best, though we are not partisan in this race. We also have on, I want to say this is courtesy Mr. Rotenberry, Thursday, February 1st. This is, I think, a virtual meeting.
Yes, sir.
On the multimodal updates from NCDOT. Is that correct? Could you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. This was a last-minute thing that I shared just this afternoon, and my apologies for that. I thought staff would be interested in attending, and certainly if commissioners are interested too. This is open to anybody. We typically do quarterly updates at the Integrated Mobility Division at NCDOT, talking about the various statewide and regional projects that we're working on. So I can make sure, or I guess I've given it to you and to Ms. Godwin, so
we can forward it to the
yeah, if you are all interested, you're welcome. I think it's at 10. I'm actually going to be in Charlotte all day for work that day, so I'm going to miss it. So unfortunate, but I think that it's only an hour, and it usually, they cover quite a number of the things we're working on. So maybe of some interest.
Appreciate you sharing, and we will be sure to share that with the rest of the commission. Last but not least, just a reminder again, courtesy Councilmember Jane Harrison, Saturday the 17th of February, Carolina Pines District D will be hosting a community engagement session on their active transportation infrastructure. I think that Commissioner Thomas plans to attend.
Yes, indeed. 9:30 a.m.
9:30 a.m. With that, any other additional events for the good of the commission, of the public? Hearing none, let us proceed with a confirmation of our next Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting on the 19th of February 2024. That is my mother's birthday. So, well, Mr. Caruso.
I just noticed that's President's Day. Is that an issue for staff or, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso, for clarifying. Though we will celebrate President's Day in our own way through our public service, our commission will, in fact, meet on February 19th, 2024, and I'll have dinner with my mother on Sunday the 18th instead. With that, the commission is now adjourned.
Right.